ook nog. Alrighty then. So I was actually supposed to be the final speaker for tonight, so a lot of my slides are all about beer time and parties, and I'll keep it short for you. However, I have a new timer here. We can go into this. And so this talk is about everything is becoming a one-liner, and I know you're thinking, oh, it's all about AI. No, that comes a little bit later in the talk. And so my name is Benniks. And I work at Content Stack, which is basically a platform that started as a CMS, but it has a whole bunch of other stuff for hosting, automations, things like that. And so there I lead developer experience, and I'm also an ambassador for Nux and Algolia and Supabase and Cloudinary. And I think this is the 8th time I'm speaking here, so I want to really thank the organization for letting me do that. This is really, really good stuff. This is one of the best ones. Like, you saw all the cool things that were like announced today. This is the place to be for us. And so my accent might sound a little strange. To the Dutchies in the audience, you'll know I'm Dutch. You can hear it, right? But I live in France, and I work with people in India and with people in the US. And so that's when you get this really weird mix. But actually, if you go across the water, that's where I was born. So I'm really happy to do a talk, in my hometown, essentially. And so let's tell a bit of a story. And so this talk was really meant to be like the last talk, so we're not going to go super deep in code. It's like, just let's talk about our history, where we started, right? Because in 2013, it was really the golden age for ad agencies. And so I worked here in Amsterdam at AKQA. And so the golden age of ad agencies literally means you have all these customers, they throw money in your face and say, build me 15 amazing things, we'll pick one, and if it works, we're happy. That's how things like Nike Plus came to me, like those kind of things we could really innovate and try. And so the money was flowing, and like all the things they asked of us were like, it was literally outrageous. And so we didn't really have that much in terms of frameworks. I know Vue.js kind of started in 2013 maybe, but I didn't know about it. Well, we had one thing, which was essentially this one, that we all know and love. And honestly, this changed the game for us. Because before that, I had to do DOM manipulation in 5 different browsers in 5 different ways. So we did have some help, but we didn't have, what is a single page app? Or how do we route something? Or how do we do like also isomorphic stuff? That was actually, we needed stuff like that back then. And so today, I want to talk about Need for Speed Rivals, which is a game that came out on the PS3, I think, in 2013. And we had to make the advertising campaign for this project. And so it had to be a single page app, but we didn't have the word for that. We just had to build something and make it feel good, but we were not allowed to use Flash. Because if I had that, it would have been amazing. Some of the younger people here might not even know what it is anymore. But yes, I was pretty happy not to use it, but then we had to invent a bunch of stuff. And so Need for Speed Rivals is this game where you're essentially, you're a cop, and you have to, make sure people follow the law. But you can follow the law by being nice with the rules, or you can just destroy the cars on the road. And of course, we know what we're all doing, right? And so, remember this, by the way. Oh, I don't have audio. Okay, we need to fix this, though, because that would have been nice. Can we try again, because maybe it was quite low? Yes. When I was making this talk and I found this, I'm like, oh, my youth came back to me. That was just so much fun. And you also have like, it's in the game one, but this was not a FIFA game. We also did those websites, but I couldn't find that source code anymore. Anyways, so let's do a little quiz time. I'm going to go and click on this link because I found the code for Need for Speed Rivals in an old Dropbox folder. And I thought, if I remove Sidecore and all the enterprise stuff and all the languages, I can probably rebuild this front end just in the old way and put it on for sale. And that actually worked. So I'm going to click this and we go through the experience and think about, at that time it was inside the Need for Speed website. And the quiz is, you're all developers here. You know exactly how to build things. And when you see something, it's like, oh, how would I build this? So first think about, what do you see? Animations, audio, things like that. How would you build that back then, if you were building? How would you build it with Vue.js? And so, well, let me just click on this and see if it works, if the internet is happy, because this is old code. Oh, it works. Okay, I think we can zoom in a little bit. All right, so have a look at like just this screen, right? We have two choices. We can watch the commercial, which we won't do now, or you can actually drive. Like, how would you do these animations? How would you tween this? Did you know we didn't really have a choice of custom fonts? We had to do all that ourselves.
So, did you come here to play fair? Or did you come here to win? Let's find out.
Consider we didn't have subtitle features yet.
Take the curve. Take the bridge. Now take the lead.
All right. What is your choice? Are we going to just pass him, or are we going to just destroy this guy? Let me just click the other one just to see the memes we were trying to do back then.
Congratulations on your epic underachievement. Tell your friends how original you are, or try again.
Shall I see if the share to Twitter with the little bird still works? How about that? Oh, I won't share it now, but there you go. Well, we have Facebook. I think this is just going to die. Decent. Sharing on Facebook was always the hardest thing. You remember this. Anyways, let's choose deception then.
Impressive. Now explore the aftermath.
Right. We didn't have, well, we had WebGL, but it was really cumbersome. So we had to do something else to get this 3D feeling to happen, right? But we didn't have Flash. And so it still had to look really smooth. And we even had like this little, blur thing that didn't exist in CSS. So this is actually, I think it's like an SVG filter or something. And so the interesting part of this whole thing is that it had to be in 35 languages. And so we didn't want to make 35 videos with a voiceover and a dude. So all the sounds that you hear are actually events in MP3s. And it's all concatenated together on like a timeline. And so also, you couldn't have a video that you controlled exactly where it would go in the keyframes. So these are actually images that are all loaded. So we had to slow the game down to 1,000%. So it's going really slowly. And then we had all the virtual cameras around the cars, took a picture of all of them, and then we would actually put that together into a video with FFmpeg, and I could then cut it out again to choose which frames I wanted. And then you can do this stuff. And of course, I tried to rebuild this whole app in Vue, right? We'll show that in a sec. That stayed exactly the same, because it's so weird. Nobody would make a library to do that. All right, let's see.
Ready to raise the stakes? Get in the event order. Rewrite the law.
Well, we know the mercy one. We'll go through, because it's basically almost done.
Duty calls, but so does victory.
And what was crazy about this one is that like it slows down, right? But we didn't have the frames. And so if you wanted to do a video that has slow motion, you have to invent the frames. But there was no AI. So what we had to do, like this is 13 years ago, like these video editors could invent frames. That's why sometimes in the end you can see it's a little bit warbly. And so we just had to invent that. And then I had to cut that out again. So we had like this grunt.js. I'm not sure anyone remembers what that was. But like this is like a build system we had before, but we couldn't really configure it. It was more, no, we couldn't really code in it. It was just a configuration, but we had FFmpeg to kind of just then extract all these files again. And
engage high-value target. Don't stop. Don't think. Just do. You know what to do. look at what you've done.
You see the warbling? Those are like fake frames we had to put in. Anyways, we don't have to continue. It's all the same basically. But did you notice it didn't load once? And each of those 360 ones were like 200 images that it had to load, and all the choice ones were also images that are all preloaded. So while you would see one scene, it would preload the next one. That also didn't exist. And like, it's just ridiculous, these things we had to build. But if this doesn't look good, everybody who wants to buy this game on their PS3 or whatever it was, it just needs to be smooth, right? So let's go back to our slides here. And so let's see, if you were guessing, like I gave away a little bit. So what are the things we had to build for this that just literally didn't exist or are becoming a little bit like, how do you call this, like community patterns, just like we have now, right? With MCP, we're trying to do things. It's similar here. So SPA wasn't the thing, but people were building it. Like we just all had a different way of putting things together. So we have to just kind of figure out, hey, we have templating, we have routing, we have views, we have controllers, right? And so all the stuff we take for granted now, like JS template language, like in Vue, it's so nice and easy and it kind of just works. Well, for us, that just didn't exist. We just knew John Razik, the guy who built jQuery, had like this templatey thing that he came up with variables in it. And so we just asked him, how did you do it? Because the world was so small then I could just ask John Razik. And then we figured it out and put it in here. And so then we, of course, had URL routing, history, deep linking. I didn't show you deep linking now, but if we had to QA a certain thing, you didn't always have to like watch all this stuff. We had to be able to just deep link directly into it. Then we had state management. We had to know which things you had clicked, because we also had like a lot of analytics and events flying, so we needed to know where you were. Then we had internationalization, and it had to be for 35 languages. And so initially they thought, oh, we'll just render images for the words. Like that's an insane idea, right? And so we had to figure out how to plug in one language into it, and then so the whole app would understand it. So the video player was actually completely custom, because all the audio and all the subtitles were custom as well. Like we didn't have subtitle track, so I had to figure out what are all the the blocks of time where something needed to happen. So there's like an event manager, essentially. And so then, of course, JS audio playing. So all the audio you hear, like hover the mouse, it's actually an event that plays an MP3 that's preloaded before. Then we had canvas animation. So all the animations that you saw that looked like videos were actually just 50 frames that we played at 60 frames per second in a canvas over a timeline. Like, why the hell would you recreate how a video works on the web? Well, because otherwise this wouldn't work, because you would have to render a video with a keyframe on every video to be able to do it, and even now, that's a little bit tricky. And so if you go to the Apple website now, where you have these lovely animations, they actually use this type of stuff still. For that, we needed a tweening library, and we needed to update the images and the videos with Grunt, like I just said. And then also, we didn't have the luxury of a Vue file, where if you have a piece of JavaScript that it just gets executed. That didn't happen at all. So for us, it was based on DOM nodes, and we had to find the DOM node and then scan it and then say, oh, I want to do this thing with this DOM node. I'll show that in a bit. And so it was really a crazy project, because we had 11 months of creative people at the agency figuring out, hey, how do we market this thing? And we were really trying to think of like, okay, everybody wants to probably torrent this game. Why don't we spread a fake torrent, and then when you get it, you actually get this website? Things like that. And EA Games actually went quite close to saying yes to stuff like this, but in the end, it was politically not good enough. Like, that was a little crazy to do that, especially in that time when torrenting was sky high. So in the end, they spent all this time, and we only had 5 weeks to build this, but I was the only front-end dev. And so there was just no sleep, basically. Luckily, we had 2 back-end devs and a QA. They were great, really great people. But we didn't have full stack. I'm not sure we still have full stack now, but that's for another talk. So this was basically me all the time. Like, I love doing all that stuff. And now with AI, of course, that's different. We can do like 5 projects at the same time. And so let's think about what we have now. Right? We have Vue.js that does our single-page app stuff. It does routing, templating, DOM manipulation, events, all the things that we had to think about, you just have. Right? And so internationalization is a really nice plugin, just works. the whole Vite infrastructure, especially with Vite Plus now, super good. We didn't have any of it. I think I had something called Uglify.js, which literally just removed the spaces. I think that's all we had. And then we had this Sidecore backend. I'm not sure if anyone here knows Sidecore, maybe a few, which is basically, it just took all the files we had and then concatenated them all back, together into one JavaScript file and CSS as well, and just removed the white space. That was our infrastructure, that's it. No builds, no tests. We have right now really, really nice animation libraries, of which GZAP is one, but you can do a lot in Vue also with CSS, right, and transforms and transitions. And of course, we have Pinia for incredible state management. I had none of this. However, why not rebuild this whole project with modern tools and see what's the difference? And so I honestly really tried to use AI to do this, because it's a lot of work to try and rebuild this. It could not get it. Like these animations and when something moves where with the DOM connections, it just could not. And even like this morning, I was like, I need to get that new project a little bit closer to the original because I didn't get to finish it. The AI just screwed it up completely, even the fancy models. So I didn't fully finish it, but it's close enough, right? And so if you look at the differences between 2013 and 2026, it's a lot easier because everything has been abstracted, but it's somewhat similar. I'm surprised how close I got back then with our community patterns to what modern tooling uses right now. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at routing. So this is my router. It's simplified because we had a lot more scenes, but NFS was like Need for Speed Rifles. So that was our namespace. We had that back then. And so inside it's a function, and these functions all like start preloader or start like scene 1 setup or start scene 2 setup would essentially just fire a controller. And the URL in another function would actually, it looks at the URL and then fires a function in the router, which then fires its own controller for preloaders or scene setup or the 360 thing. And then we had to always destroy that controller. So this is, you can see this as mount and unmount, because on mount, all the events get bound to the DOM. Well, we had to then always unmount it first and then do it again, because if you have double events, things get painful very, very quickly. And so this actually looks kind of close to this, which is our Vue router, right? Of course, history out of the box, that's so nice. And you have a Vue file that just does all the things. You just have to, you just import it lazily, and there you go. And this, but it's not that different. This is just a lot easier, and of course it's unit tested, it's typed. We didn't know what TypeScript was, obviously. So then templating. This one was kind of crazy. So what we did, this is what John Rasick did back then. So we have a script with a type X JavaScript template. And in there you would just put your Java or your CSS and your HTML. And do you recognize those curlies that use MP4? This kind of looks like Vue, no? Just a little. And this was actually something they called mustache templating. And I think that's still, the name still exists, but there was, or mustache, right? And there was this really cool library that would actually grab your variables from JSON or wherever and then replace it. And we had some simple if statements. We had some loops here and there, but not really. And so this kind of just worked because we would have one index HTML with all these templates just there, and we would take that DOM, clone it, and put it in the app based on the route and that controller. So we would then bind the controller to this HTML that we put together. And this kind of sounds like what Vue does automatically, right? And so we'll talk about what that data widget means in a sec. And so we would have this like get template, and you see there's the mustache.render. Luckily, I didn't have to write that myself, because that's like a lot of string parsing, I guess. And so we could render the template, so the target would be the DOM node we put it into. And so we would get that from get template, put it in, and then we would scan the DOM to see, hey, is there any JavaScript we have to attach to these DOM nodes? And that's what that NS scanner actually is. And so what we did is like, the new HTML would be in the DOM, and for that new DOM node, we had a scanner that looped over all the DOM nodes, like jQuery used to do, And we would actually say, hey, there's data-widget, and the name is video player. So what that would do, like video player was already loaded in the browser. We just know, hey, this DOM node needs this JavaScript, and then it has data options with a whole bunch of stuff. And this is also how we did all like the localizations and translations. It would just all be rendered in the HTML. We would grab it and then fire it off. And then if new HTML would be rendered in that same gap, basically, or that same hole, we would then, destroy all these bindings and then rebind it again. Or back then, if you did an AJAX call, which we call fetch nowadays, we would also then, if the HTML was replaced, unscan or destroy the old stuff and put the new stuff on. And I'm so happy I never have to do this again. But it actually worked pretty well. And now, of course, we have this. And this is the lovely part about what I especially love in Vue. It's just, this is of course a simplified version, but this is just one file where I have a little bit of my JavaScript stuff, I have a bit of my CSS stuff if I wanted to, I have a bit of my HTML, and then the fact that we have this component called choice player, like we didn't have components, that was not a thing. So it's so nice to just make a file that has its own stuff, you put it in, but it's just one file. And that's the part that I really like about Vue.js, where it still feels like my old school self, where I have everything there, and I can deal with DOM and do stuff like that, but all the complex stuff is being taken care of. Right? So this was a lot nicer to build. Let's have a look at state management. So this is what we had. I don't know why I called it JSON data, but I guess it was. Right? So, and this was a big, big object because it had all the languages and all that stuff in it, and all these like 360 views had like 200 files that it was preloading. And so all the file names and the fact that they were loading and all that stuff was actually in there. And so you can see the logo animations, subtitles, IDs of template selectors, DOM nodes. The thing is, this was completely mutable. So if I had a bug in my code, this would be muted, done. Whole website is dead. Because we didn't have that concept of a single page app. We couldn't just reload because it goes back to the beginning. Because we didn't, keep the URL state. And so yeah, that was really challenging. And I had to build like my own kind of little helper functions, like for a certain action, like for example, load the preloader to get that part back from the JSON data. And then when it was done, we actually removed it from the memory. So it couldn't go wrong. But it was a lot of work. Like this, I simplified this, but this was like 600 lines. You don't want that. Like, we actually want this, which is Pinia. So it's a little small, but I guess on this screen it should work. And so everything is typed. And you get getters, you get actions, state setters. It's so much nicer in Pinia. And others like RStore and stuff, like they all have this lovely, just DX is everything, right? And we didn't have it, but it still worked. And we had this other thing, which I now built in here, because the UI in this app, like with these choices, and you go into different places, right? And you can have to reset certain things and then click there and it goes to the next thing. That UI is fully reactive, but we didn't have that. We just had to click on a DOM node and hope for the best and see if all the events work and fire. Here, I could just make a composable called use choice interaction, and the UI would be interactive. And so I could actually then have functions with clicks, for example, like a handle enter or handle leave, that would change that UI in this little reactive object. And so it's so easy in Vue.js now to just click a thing, this thing keeps track of the state, and this might update if we needed it, in Pinia. Let's see, what else do we have? Animations. So we, like everything you saw in that website, like when things moved from side to side, but also like the images that would play like a video, that all used a tweening engine. But there were some tweening engines, but nothing worked. So I just made my own crappy tweening engine, but I only had 5 weeks, so you do that in 2 days and hope for the best. And it kind of worked, and it had like staggering things or incomplete and things like that. And so this actually kind of worked, but I looked at it now, and it had all sorts of memory leaks. And it had, request animation frame globally running all the time. And then events would just go into it and hope for the best. But if you, I don't know why this website worked, honestly. But it worked. And so, funnily enough, I just wrapped that old thing into use tween and built it in a new one. And yeah, it's not for production, it's fine. Of course, we could also use transitions, which are so nice in Vue. You just use transitions and CSS. So lots of the things like the moving around is just a transition. However, this tweening engine sucked. It's fine. However, I looked at it, and this morning we were talking about Vite Plus, right? And I thought, let's make this code modern, because it feels like there is something to this, because I have no slide for it, but my API looked so much like GSAP right now, that I like, oh, maybe there is something to this, what we came up with back then, like that tween.2 in the timeline thing we had. And so about 20 minutes ago, I made it work in Vite Plus, because I thought my talk was like in 3 hours. So now we have Turbo Tween, and it actually works. So if you want, welcome the age of AI, right? So when you go to npmx, you can actually find this. And this library is only 5 kilobytes, and it has no dependencies, and it works on SSR, TypeScript first. It works in Vue and React, because if you have AI, you say, make it work in React. And it kind of did. I don't care, but it did. And it's very easy to install, lots of docs, and it works on Vite Plus. And I think I have a little comparison table here. If you think about it, GSAP is like the market leader almost, right? It's like 5 times bigger. It doesn't have native TypeScript, doesn't adapt to just Vue out of the box. It's kind of crazy. And so if you're into this kind of stuff, feel free to download and play. It has all the playwright tests, and it kind of just works pretty well. But of course, like anything, you just release quite quickly. It might not work for everything, but if you want to and you like stuff like this, feel free to try and let me know. All right, so let's step back and see what this whole experience taught us, right? So over time, all these architectural things that I had to come up with my colleagues and friends, they kind of now became configuration. You just install Pinia, you install Vite, and it kind of just works, because this is what Vue.js and the Vue.js ecosystem is so good at, right? No config, just run. Then, I don't think the magic increased at all. It actually just got abstracted away a little bit. And so the magic is still inside, but it's all just much easier now. And so if we look at 2013 to 2026, it's basically the painful implementation in the community patterns where I was sitting, right? And so over time, it becomes libraries like Vue, and then it becomes standards, and then it's boring. But because it's boring, you get to do the cool stuff that I had to invent. Like, I got bold just doing those things. But if I had Vue.js then, this experience would have been even better, like a lot better, actually. So boring is good. And so most folks in this room probably didn't write an XML HTTP request or made a tweening engine because they didn't have one. I would say that's progress, right? I would say use the tools you have now to actually do cooler shit. And so we see this question evolve a little bit, right? It's kind of like, now here's the AI stuff, I promised. It becomes a bit of a command now. So you basically, I would say, okay, how do I do this routing thing, let's say. Right now, you just figure out which one fits best. In our case, in Vue, we're good. But sometimes, like with Void, it might be file-based or stuff like that, right? So you get to choose. But maybe next year, you just say, I don't care what router it is, just add it, please. You don't look at it. And so actually, that boring default, if we have that boring default, actually Open Skynet is really quite cool. Oops. Right? Having this AI is going to help you, but it only can do that if it has this really good, like all that below, all the stuff that the people that speak at this conference, for example, worked on, make this AI so good. Without that, you have nothing, essentially. Right? And so Vue.js is really one of the biggest shoulders we all get to stand on, so AI gets a lot better, because without that, it's kind of just, it doesn't know what to do. You need libraries, and we need like the Vite Pluses and the Voids and the Nuxt to be able to know what to do and make it work. And so are you this, or are you this? In this age of abstraction, right? I personally say I'm more than happy to just use whatever we have and stand on the shoulders of all these people that built this cool shit. and just really build the next impossible thing. That's what I want to do. And so that's me. Thank you.